Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Rich Revolutionaries podcast. If you've been feeling it lately, the weight of something that you can't quite name, an old grief resurfacing, family dynamics getting loud again, the ground underneath you feeling less solid than it did a few weeks ago, I need you to know that this is not a malfunction. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. This is the cosmos doing exactly what it said it would do. We're on the back end of a Cancer new moon and a Mercury retrograde that will be historically remembered. And this particular combination is not here to play. Cancer, for those of you who don't know, rules the home, the mother line, the lineage, and the emotional body. While Mercury retrograde in this sign means the past is not staying in the past, okay? It's coming back for you. Ancestral grief is activating. Inherited belief systems are being exposed at the root. The codependent and conditional love dynamics that have lived quietly underneath the surface of your relationships, they're coming up to be seen. The nervous system patterns of freeze and flight, the ways your body learned to stay safe are now being interrupted, not quietly at all. The collective is in a state of full cognitive dissonance right now, and I'm going to get into deep diving into more of what that means throughout this podcast episode. But what I want you to remember is that perception is shifting, and what used to feel stable, familiar, no longer does. What felt true is being questioned. It's not a detour, it's a forced integration. Because we can't actually move forward from the version of ourselves collectively and yourself individually if you're still operating from inherited pain, inherited smallness, inherited definitions of what safety and belonging are allowed to look like for you, and then zoom out collectively. So that's what we're getting into today. What this astrology is actually asking of you, how to work with it instead of white knuckling your way through it, and what becomes available on the other side when you let this season do what it came to do. So let's get into it. Hello, if you are new here, my name is Shanice. I am your host and New Earth embodiment and business mentor, here to redefine the social cultural landscape through rebuilding reality from the inside out. And with that as my mission and my title, of course, this cosmic weather has been extra potent for me. So I'm going to share some personal stories to ground everything that I'm bringing forward in this episode. We are collectively, and we have been for a while, coming to a pinnacle, redefining safety and belonging. Where it used to be safety from external sources, safety in obedience, safety in compliance, safety in the status quo, safety in the systems and structures of education and corporate and healthcare and the legal system, right? All of these societal structures. And then the flip side, or complementary, the cultural structures of being nice and polite and the good girl and our the ways our family anchors those for us, of not taking too much space, of receiving love, for showing up in an easy golden child, beautiful, perfect image of like, we're a happy family, when the reality of life is that sure, we can create a container of that. And the emotions of grief, of fear, of painful seasons of life, of things falling apart, of shame coming up, of um, rage coming up is also a valuable expression. And inside a lot of dysfunctional family systems, these just aren't allowed. And so this gets stored in the roots ourselves, like literally in our root chakra, in our physical body and our like sexual organs, and collectively, right? How we root into reality, what that means. And there can be a naive, childlike innocence of thinking that, okay, we're all operating in this shared reality. But the more you develop in your awareness and your emotional intelligence and your relational maturity, the more you're going to realize that reality is subjective and constructive. And we have sovereign choice in how we are constructing our reality. And this is what is being revisited in this cosmic portal with the new moon and the Mercury retrograde. So, what else is in the mix that made this one different? There's a lot of surrounding transits with Saturn in Aries, with Jupiter in Cancer. So, it wasn't just like personal, right? This is why I'm kind of going into the micro and the macro lens of this energetic. It activated this question. And when I drop it, I want you to take some space to breathe into it and see how it lands in your body. What sensations arise? What are your automatic and reactions? Are you open to this curious exploration, or is it feeling more sticky and resistant? Knowing that neither expression is right or wrong, it's just information from your subconscious. So, what has been unconsciously inherited that can no longer continue? What has been unconsciously inherited that can no longer continue? Line in the sand moment. And, there can be a feeling of overwhelm, of going into the head of like, okay, what is it? I don't know. And you're not going to find the answers here, right? Our inheritance, our roots are, and for audio listeners, I'm pointing to like my heart to my root, right? That is your channel. That is where all of the answers lie, in the place that you know beyond the knowing of your mind. And that's the knowing we want to lead from. So the themes that surfaced. Okay. Let's get into grief. This is the last spotlight session that I held that synchronistically aligned with the exact date of the new moon. And I chose these themes months and months and months ago without looking at the astrology. So I love when um, that intuitive guidance happens organically when the unconscious is expressing itself without distortion, right? This is what we're clearing. And it can be frustrating. It can feel like, what is going on, especially for the people who are living up here, that are intellectualizing emotions, that want to psychoanalyze, like, why am I feeling this way? The theme of this transit was grief without a clear origin. Can you allow yourself to grieve without attaching a story to it? I'm going to share the story of how this showed up for me. It's not always tied to present events, okay? This one specifically was ancestral grief, inherited loss, emotional residue from family systems, unprocessed endings from past cycles. And And when we have these big emotional waves, especially with the exiled emotions like grief, it moves through our relational fields, right? As much as we want to not project that activation of grief onto the present, onto our relationships, onto our partners, this is where I'm going with my experience. Um, it's the people that are closest to us that are going to mirror our experience back to us. And so I had this big grief portal open up post grief to love spotlight session. And the way that I intellectualized it, I'm not a perfect specimen here, was that it was all my partner's fault. It was this I have a history of emotional abuse and neglect in, family systems and past relationships. And so I was projecting this heavy onto my partner. My partner is not a perfect person either. He's going through his own process. And rather than coming together to speak about what I'm feeling and having a container just to have that heard, asking for that, that is the key, right? Um, I was just like, in this grief and assigning it to the relationship. Okay. Rather than allowing the space of the grief to exist without a story. And grief is one that cracks us open. It dissolves our identities of who we know ourselves to be. And that can feel really scary. So, places we go when we feel heaviness out of nowhere and this sense of like nostalgia of like I've been here before, mixed with like the sadness of like I don't want to be here, and this like longing for something that's still undefined. The desires still hang out in our erotic shadow. And I love to talk about this in my world. I actually have a whole program coming up, which I'll talk to you more about later in the episode called Attention Whores, intentionally provocative. And that one's starting on Monday, July 27th. So the details will be in the show notes, and I'll get into more of what that is later. So, like I was saying, we go in this place of like, I don't know, like, is it my relationship? Like, what I did was just blow it up, and this is what happens when we're not present with the sensations in our body, unblending from the story. And we're going through this big rebirth initiation. We have this response to keep ourselves safe, to blow our whole life up, to end the relationship, to move out of our home, to move to a new country, to change our business model, to cut a program, to uh, rebrand, all of these expressions. And rather than being in this place of confusion, of chaos and upheaval, when we can just root into, okay, what is in my root field? Oh, there's grief there. Okay, letting that be felt, letting myself cry, letting the heaviness be there without trying to fix it, without trying to get it to go away, without trying to blame it and project it on someone, right? This is emotional intelligence embodied. And again, it's not perfect, right? Even as someone who mentors people through these transformations, I still ended up in this old pattern, but we'll get into the wisdom of that in a moment here. I'm gonna turn my AC on. It's getting hot up in here. Okay, another theme of this cosmic weather is family and home instability triggers. Remember how I mentioned the whole like blowing up my life and my relationship? Well, with that, I was like, I'll just move to this new town. I'm going to go fulfill my dream to work on a regenerative agriculture farm. I like found this place. I inquired about volunteering. I was ready to, do what I needed to do, pack my bags and be out of here by Monday. And the reason this was so activated is because Cancer literally governs our emotions and our home, right? So this activated like housing shifts. A lot of people I knew actually moved. A lot of people did experience breakups as well. Um, or like taking the next step in a relationship. There's so many different expressions depending on the person where we're at in our evolution. Relationship factors and family systems. We had family drama going on this past week. This is partially not to blame, but the root of it, or what uh, intensified, amplified it, provided us with a window for new choice, and we'll get into that. This could provoke questions of like, where do I belong? Of feeling this survival fear versus what's actually real. And when our nervous systems are under the influence of survival fear, it's literally like you're on drugs. Okay. It colors your perception of reality. That fear, some people say like false reality is appearing real. And there's different functions of fear, right? There's the fear that like keeps us safe from physical danger, like looking both ways before crossing the street, like not walking off the ledge of a high building, or eating like contaminated food or swimming in shark-infested water. There's a story about that coming too. Well, I'll drop that one quickly. My partner actually did this weekend. He was stoked. His inner child was so happy. And so, right, different experiences for different people. I had an experience after getting some deep body work done, some myofascial release in my womb, and like the womb for video listeners, like below the belly button and above the mons pubis, that is your mother line. Okay. And you might have heard this before, but you existed in the ovaries of your great grandmother when she was experiencing her life because your mother was in her ovary, your grandmother was in her ovaries, and your mother was in her ovaries. And like we have all of our eggs when we were born into the world through like as infants coming out of utero. And so these genetic shifts, these epigenetic shifts that happen based on when there were very real survival threats that invoke this fear to take action to keep us safe. Like, I have Irish ancestry, and we're gonna get into this more. I'm kind of easing us through the layers. Um, and there's a famine that happened in Ireland, a potato famine, you might have heard, historically. And so if I feel like there's not food in the fridge, like I sort of freak out. I know I can go to the store to get food. And still there's that cellular ancestral memory of like not having food. Many other expressions came through. There's like, I'm going to stay focused here. I love to go on a tangent as a storyteller. So, and that's you too. Like, leave a comment and let's like celebrate our cyclical storytelling, ADHD, final boss. I like to say. And so this gets into the last point of like the family home instability triggers that came up of scarcity and fear imprinting on the root level. So for many, external instability, like the relationship situation, like the home situation that I spoke to, mirrored this internal restructuring that's happening. So take a moment to realize like what happened in this past week for you around these themes of family and home, where it triggered some instability, some insecurity. And like I experienced it in the lower octaves, right? Of like I wasn't conscious of it and present with it in the moment. And now I'm kind of like retroactively like, what the fuck just happened? Let's put the pieces together. But I'm also I can confidently say that there are some people that experience the higher octaves of this. Like this person that I'm connected with through the online space, the love and relationship coach, her housing shift was experiences like she moved out of her house and she took the next step of her relationship with her partner by moving in together. Right. And so we don't want to blame the astrology because that's outsourcing our power, which we're going to get into here shortly. But we do want to be aware of the energetic influences, how they're impacting us. And like something I could have done, and something you may want to do is like track the astrology so that you know what themes are being highlighted before they arrive in your reality. So you can have that awareness to take conscious choice. And fuck it up, it's okay. I always like to root back into the belief of like what is meant for me will never miss me. I can't fuck up a relationship that is like destined to be like a divine union pairing, right? There's no amount of fuckery karmically that can sever that bond. And we want to be self-responsible and accountable inside of that. Okay. Moving on to mother wounds and caregiving dynamics. So, Cancer brings up overgiving, emotional labor, codependency, and this like lack of being held, this overpouring. Think of water, think of a cup. Like, where has your cup run dry and you're still trying to pour, right? Where are you in a dynamic of conditional love of if I'll give an example from that's very prevalent from my childhood. Like I received my um father's attention and love and approval when I got 100% on something in school. He would literally give me money to like positively reinforce that. And then wasn't too present for any type of emotional space holding or like guidance of how to be an adult in the world or how to be a child or how to be a teenager in the world, right? He didn't choose to take on that role in this life in our dynamic. Maybe next week. And so what this created in my psyche and in my soma is that this belief that love is earned. And so that program was playing out in my relationship where I was tolerating these avoidant behaviors of like not showing up to have conversations that I asked for space to be held or um, not sharing like his internal world and like being dismissive of mine and showing up as hypercritical of everything that I was doing around the house, like having these anger outbursts. And rather than being firm, holding my frame, like I will not be treated like this, it sent me in, it activated this programming of love is earned and also paired with this belief of if I don't say anything, then I will be safe, which is how I navigated the situation with my father growing up. And so it was expressing in this tolerant, codependent relationship dynamic. And as we do, I was exacerbating the um, situation with this little thing, scrolling on TikTok and YouTube that was recommending me things that were reinforcing this confirmation bias of my reality, which is a really fucked up layer that we have to navigate in the online space of, just how much we engage with certain types of content, how fast we click, how long we stay, like if our thumb like hovers on something, all this data is being recorded. And so when we're under these influences, when these um, programs are being activated, when these relationship dynamics are expressing themselves, our phones are literally feeding us a feed, feed, yes. Um, of confirming content, which, especially if you're going to self-regulate by scrolling, which is a habit that I am navigating, distancing myself from. And, you know, mm, I'm not going to go there actually. We're just going to leave it at that. Okay. This whole picture that I'm painting for you is the shift that was being purged through this cosmic weather, where it was just so intense in my face that I was like, no, no more. This ends with me. I'm not going to grip harder. I'm not going to fawn and please more to receive love, to receive belonging, to receive safety through this relationship. And so it came a point where I was like, I think we should break up. So because I was in this state of self-abandonment, my response to try to keep me safe was fawn. And then when I was like, wait, no, I don't want to fawn anymore, the nervous system responds with more activation because fawn is hypoarousal. Next step up is hyperarousal. All right, well, then I was ready to flight. Then I realized, okay, wait, let me just tend to myself. Let me just put this whole relationship drama on pause and come back to myself. Give myself the love that I'm seeking externally, to not collapse into this relationship, to not grip into this relationship, to not avoid what I'm feeling, but actually just be present with it. And this is where this new moon asked, where did you learn that love requires self-abandonment? So I would love to hear in the comments or in a DM if you want to be anonymous, like how this showed up for you. And if this is landing, if you resonate with the story that I'm sharing. And it's quite a vulnerable one, which is how I love to lead, just empowered vulnerability. Definitely was not empowered in my vulnerability through this. And there was these layers of shame and embarrassment that came on top of it because I brought some mentors and friends in the online space into this with me. Um, like bless their souls. Like thank you so much to everybody who was there, like supporting me and holding space for the grief that I was moving through, that allowed me to come back into my sovereign choice of how I want to show up to this, how I want to create my relationship, how I want to take self accountability for my part. Because, sure, my partner was responding with criticism and anger and all of these things, but I was like leaning, collapsing into him. And he's like, I didn't like, this is not what I signed up for. Right. I also am have been moving through this process of really, really isolating all the small little energetics where I am still in this victim expression, right? And my backstory with it, if you're a frequent listener of the podcast, if you've been here since the beginning, you know that I experienced childhood sexual assault. And so that's where that gets imprinted into my womb. Okay. So all the girlies who have experience with sexual assault, which is literally like half the population, probably more, this is going to be something that was very highlighted for you with this moon. And so if that is you, I see you, I feel you, I love you. And there's this culture of like victim blaming and victim shaming and then collective. And of course, we don't want to be in our expression of like, this happened to me. And also the disconnection from our womb, the violation of that sacred space of creation within us is the most, there aren't even words, the most like cataclysmic experience that someone can move through to rupture the sense of safety and belonging and trust. And, when we're talking about roots, it's also our relationship to the masculine. It's also our sense of stability, our trust within ourselves. And so, no point do I ever want to justify or excuse a victim expression, but I do want to bring more nuance to the conversation of if this is something that you're still navigating and you feel like I should be past this already. And that's how I feel a lot of the time. Where you are in this moment is exactly where you need to be in your process. And you do not need to be fully healed to be fully out of this expression to be on mission in the world, to generate revenue, to build a business, to speak on podcasts, to write a book, to do whatever you want to do. It doesn't, they're not mutually exclusive, right? As this is something that can be a program, right? Okay, tangent. But we are getting to the nervous system and somatic imprints that have kind of been weaving throughout, but I want to get laser focused on that. So whenever we're talking about emotions or like psychology, it cannot be separated from what's going on a physiological level in our body. Like, I remember when I was in my hometown recently, there was someone that was talking with my mom, and I'm often overhearing these conversations because I'm just around. He was like, "Oh yeah, it was just a like a mental, or no, it was just like a physical thing. It wasn't mental." I was like, those things can't be separated, right? It cannot. No part of our being, mental, emotional, physical, energetic, spiritual, can ever be separated from the other. It's a whole system. And the more we're able to acknowledge that in the way that we see ourselves and the way that we live our lives, the more that we are moving from this wholeness and this sovereignty that is never removed. There just has imprints on top of it. So this is what is being unpacked here. Okay. What has surfaced is, like I was saying, this fawn, this freeze expression, actually being mobilized into some flight, or maybe you're more of a fighter. Nervous system response, whatever your survival strategy was that worked in um, childhood when you learned these things, or what worked ancestrally, right? We're going to get into that layer a little bit more. Um, Speaking about grandmothers, like I mentioned recently on my Instagram a few times, my grandmother became a widow at, I think, like 32. She had four girls, and she had married her husband that had just deceased when she was 16 years old. She was a girl herself. And so, with this dynamic of like codependency that was kind of just like the normal template at that time, she didn't know how to operate in the world without her husband. So she went into a deep freeze and fawn, and it's created a whole lot of chaos in the family line. And so that is something that when she was experiencing that, like epigenetically, my mom was in the environment, my ovarian egg was in her womb. And so that was already being programmed into my nervous system before I was born, okay? Again, and I'm always going to bring it back to this, awareness equals choice, not excuses, justification. And this shows up as these stored survival patterns that are activated under relational stress, as you have seen me illustrate here. And something that really broke through the relational tension was by tending to my tissues. And I was walking with my partner the other morning after we'd like reconciled everything that happened and, wiped the slate, reset the timeline, and cleared the karmic imprints. And I was like, holy, this message landed in my channel. Like, this is so profound, but so obvious. I just need to say it. Tension in your tissues equals tension in your relationships. So rather than trying to fix the relationship, tend to your tissues. It's so simple, yet so profound. Our bodies are the messengers of our subconscious, of our soul, which is why the medicine here is self-tending to the body, not overriding it, not trying to keep showing up to what you're doing without taking that space to. I received some deep body work, some myofascial release through a practitioner, but even just like, you know, self-tending, bringing your hands to your body. When is the last time you brought your hands to your body lovingly, slowly, with presence and no agenda? Just to feel what is moving there and to create containment, tending, presence for it within your own system, right? This is historically something that would have been more integrated into our lives. And I always think of my mom, like, she has this really elaborate nighttime routine where she's like slathering herself with all of these lotions and doing her red light therapy. And she has her like ultrasonic little thing. And she used to do like paraffin wax, like feet masks, and now she has this like massage chair, and she's like into the robotics of it. But this self-tending is sacred, right? It's not luxury, it's not privilege, it is a cornerstone of being connected to yourself. It's like this tending to your physical vessel. Okay, so that was the Cancer new moon focus. Now, let's shift gears a little bit and get into the Mercury retrograde, this memory loop activation. When we hear about Mercury retrograde, a lot of times we can hear about like logistical lags of tech failure, of like communication glitches and all these things. But this Mercury retrograde wasn't that. Because it was in the sign of Cancer, it was about emotional truth that never fully processed or was spoken, was expressed. So here's what happened. It reopened emotional timelines of old conversations resurfacing, of past relationships reappearing, either, physiologically or psychologically, always both and. It depends who we are, where we're on our journey, and what our unique composition of like where we're gonna have that trailhead, the access point into our internal world. Where unresolved dynamics demand our acknowledgement. And this, I want to speak to this victim perpetrator dynamic that became visible. And when we have a history of neglect, abuse, assault, and we go into that, and this can be like often is unconscious, subconscious, then we're going to make somebody else the bad guy. We're going to make somebody else the perpetrator. We're going to outsource that blame because historically, that was the truth. And oftentimes, as in my situations, when we come forward initially with that truth, as I did as a small child, it is hush. It is like, okay, we're not going to tell dad about that. When it happened, in my experience, as a young adult, it's like, oh, well, I was just drunk, like, whatever. I don't even know really what happened. But the body knows. Our emotional bodies, our physical bodies hold these memories, hold these somatic imprints of dynamics until there actually is a container of safety, of love, unconditionally, to for them to be witnessed, to be released, to be purged, and to be repatterned. So I want you to check yourself. And this is going to take some honesty, and I hope that you navigate this with unconditional love of where you're playing the victim, where you're assigning somebody else as the villain in your story, the perpetrator of your pain, when that is not actually the reality that is in front of you. Remember when I said that reality is subjective? Subject and object of observation are inextricably linked. We see this in science through the double slit experiment that when a light beam is shown through two slits of paper, when one light beam is being observed and the other one is not, the course of the light actually shifts from the observation itself. Well, our fascial systems are literally conduits for consciousness that moves through as light, as these electrons, these atoms. And by a subjective observation of reality, the object, the other person, actually takes on this form. And this is the mechanism of psychological projection. And so it's tricky. It's tricky to notice when that's happening because it feels real. Because on some level it is, right? And this is where self-responsibility, where really being in that radical honesty is like, okay, where am I making someone the villain in the story that is not actually reflective of who they are? And this doesn't get to exist within the container of your own heart, of your own mind, of your own womb, right? This is going to happen within the relational space. And that's where it gets vulnerable because then that sense of safety and that sense of belonging is activated. But it's also the beauty because our wounds, this place where we were previously victimized, happened in a relationship. And so the healing, the coming back into our sovereign self responsibility also happens through relationship. And so these ruptures need to happen in order for that identity recalibration to take place. And like, oh my God, I'm sitting in so much gratitude for my partner and his willingness to walk through these fires of initiation with me and be with him too. That's the beauty, that's the intelligence of the divine union template. And why, when we're rebuilding a village, model a society, that it is essential that we don't just do the easy thing of A, collapsing back into the familiar, or B, bulldozing past, white knuckling past. I don't have time for this past. My business is the most important thing past. This relationship is in the way past. This like da 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 past the actual experience coming into direct contact with that part of self that is still playing the role of the victim, that is still carrying the burden of grief, to allow that burden to be unloaded, to be transformed. And the role that that part is playing gets to be transformed in that too. What was previously the victim then gets to become the creator. It's like, what do you want to create with this experience? I'm creating this podcast right now. We get to assign new meaning. And when we do that, it's a shift in perspective. That's a shift in reality. And that's what this whole Cancer New Moon retrograde was all about. And in order for this like deep recoding of reality at the root level to take place, of course, our surface level communication, like society likes to operate inside of. This neurodivergent woman. I fucking hate it. I just want to dive into the deep end right away, which, has its own pros and cons. It was disrupted. You couldn't bypass with logic, explain things cleanly, move forward quickly, no matter how hard you tried, including anger and shame that had been suppressed, right? That anger towards the masculine, that shame for, being in a victimized expression, including the truth that destabilizes relational illusions, right? And I came into it thinking that the truth is like this relationship is over. But really the truth is that my collapse, my victimization inside of the relationship is over. That identity is laid to rest. It had his last hurrah, and now it is laid to rest. And nothing happens in isolation, right? Nothing happens in a static way. And so, of course, there's still going to be echoes of that that energetic. But the difference is I chose and I've decided that each time that comes forward, I'm going to recognize it for what it is. My partner is going to reflect it for what it is. That's our agreement. And I'm going to choose differently. We are going to choose differently. And that's how identities get re-evolve, rebirth. And that's how patterns get broken. So I want you to ask yourself the real question. What was never actually said or felt? Again, giving it some space. Take a deep breath into it. Let it land in your body. What was never actually said or felt? And kind of let it like descend through the layers. Maybe it's not something that wasn't said or felt for you. Maybe it was your great grandmother. Maybe it was something in your ancestry. Maybe it was something in your childhood. Maybe it was something that was just this week, right? What was never actually said or felt? All right. This combination, Cancer, Mercury Retrograde, was always meant to be intergenerational narrative editing. Don't It's not have like a ring to it? Intergenerational narrative editing. But yeah. I'm thinking of like an editor of a book, right? Like the story's written and it's like, oh, like that's not actually fully indicative of the truth of what wants to come through. And so, like, can we edit it that? Can we shift that? Can we change our relationship to that? Can we change how that's being expressed? So, this is our beliefs that passed through family lines, became visible, where emotional patterns repeated across generations surfaced, and inherited scripts around safety, money, love, survival came online, including scarcity of like, there's not enough, I'm not enough, this relationship isn't enough, and fear as an inherited baseline where love must be earned. It's like conditional attachment, emotional abuse and neglect projection patterns that I spoke to, and this outsourcing oxytocin and centering men for regulation and validation, like wounded feminine expression, let me tell you. Feminine nervous systems regulate on oxytocin, which is the love and bonding hormone. So if you notice yourself, like I need cuddles, I have this um thing that I say in my relationship of like I have a cuddle quota. You're looking for eye gazing, of you're like pulling for their attention, you're like doing extra like caregiving, caretaking things, or like shrinking yourself or shifting your behavior, your expression, or your emotion of like this like muchness that is your essence of shine for that like, oh, okay, I'm okay because the relationship is okay. You're outsourcing your oxytocin and your regulation to a man. And even if this is like the most loving, wonderful man ever, that's still not taking self-responsibility and being in a sovereign self-expression. And so coming back to the question I asked, like, when's the last time you brought your hands to your body in a loving, present, slow, intentional, not rushed, no agenda, you're not trying to extract pleasure from yourself way. So literally just like when you're feeling like urged to be like, please look at me, please talk to me, please cuddle me, please hold me, like all these things. And for the audio listeners, I'm just running my hands on the surface of my body. It's like called an oxytocin wash, like butterfly tap on your chest, lateral stimulation. Like give yourself a hug. You can hold your face tenderly. You can like pet your own hair, right? Can lovingly speak prayers of care and adoration onto yourself. You can prepare yourself like beautiful, nourishing food and beverages with intention, like whisper your love into them. Co-regulate with the earth. Literally like lay like face down on the earth for 10 minutes, like come back and see how you're feeling inside of your heart. Put your face in the sun, right? This is an outsourcing oxytocin because you are nature. That's another illusion of separation, like the mind body, like separation that I was talking to that I clocked in that conversation in my hometown. It's the same thing with us, who we are, our identity, and nature. It's not separate. It never could be. We are one whole living organism. And so just like listening to the birds singing is going to produce that oxytocin response. It's regulating for your nervous system. Take yourself on a walk. There's so many like really simple things that we can do consistently to in-source our oxytocin to stay. And when I say regulated, like let's cut out the bullshit with that. Regulated does not mean calm all the time. Regulated does not mean you're tolerant of fuckery in your life. That no matter what someone throws at you, you're this calm, cool, collected woman. No. Regulation looks like emotional expression. Regulation looks like movement. Regulation looks like crying, looks like dancing, looks like yelling and stomping. It looks like sometimes calm if that's the truth of the moment. Regulation is an unobstructed flow of life force energy through your channel. Remembering channel is like heart to womb. And that's the connection place that is being reestablished for anyone who's victimized of abuse, assault, neglect, and just collectively because we live in a capitalistic, patriarchal, colonized society widespread globally. We all have been quote unquote victimized by these systems of oppression in some way or another, somewhere in our ancestry. There is no being above it. It's just a matter of integrating it. So some like sentence stems examples of this intergenerational narrative that comes through is I have to struggle to be safe or to make money. Those things can be convoluted. Love is unstable. I can't rely on others, the murder. And home is temporary. Had a lot of instability in your childhood if you moved around a lot, like military families or um, children of divorce. These are beliefs that get inherited into our root system. And they're not just thoughts, right? They're not just like in our brain. They're not just something that we can like detach from and like show up differently. They're ancestral agreements. They exist in the cellular memory of our DNA in our bodies. And this transit exposed them real good. But the good news is because we can tend to that, because we can be with that, because we can feel our way through it, we get to shift our relationship to it. We get to create something beautiful and meaningful from it. And that is the key. Victim to creator. Let go of the perpetual need to be in these healing loops that, by the way, the healing industrial complex is majorly benefiting from. I'll put that out there to anybody who is outsourcing their regulation to breath work, yoga, energy healing, therapy, you know, hot and cold baths. What else? What else are the wellness girlies doing out there? Pilates, saunas, like all this stuff, right? We love it. I love it. Okay, but there's a difference between going to those places and those activities with the intention of enjoyment, of enhancement, of maybe it's a social experience for you, versus going to it from a place of victimhood, of desperation, of this is going to fix me, this is going to heal me, this is going to make me feel okay, this is going to make me feel safe, right? Very different energetics, very different outcomes. Okay. Saturn and Aries. Okay, we didn't get into this one too much. This episode is much than I expected to be, but I'm so here for it. And if you've made it this far, I want you to drop a say a crab emoji for Cancer in the comments of whatever platform you are listening to this on, Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. And I'll know you're a real one that listened to this point. Okay. Saturn, and like I'm in my Saturn return, and my Saturn is in Aries, so this was like even more amplified for me. I love to experience things as most initiatory possible. That is in my energetic signature. That girl is the reality check against the past. All this emotional material surface, Saturn in Aries is asking, and again, giving yourself the space to breathe into this, to let it land, to see what comes up, rather than thinking about it. What are you actually going to build differently? So the tension, actually, let me give us some space. What are you actually going to build differently? For me, what comes up immediately is like different child rearing. I'm not putting my children in school. I want to build on land with the village and deep connection with nature and harmonious relationships surrounding for communal child rearing, right? I don't want to do it in separation in the nuclear family in the little like apartment or the individual home where all of all of everything is outsourced to external systems and there's this like urgency, there's this like performance, there's this productivity driving engine at the center of that separation and disconnection in family units by design. I'm not doing that. It ends with me. So the tension here was all right, we have the Cancer energy and the Saturn and Aries energy. And this, if you felt this like inner conflict of this push-pull, let me tell you, I definitely did. This was the energetic externally that was bringing that to the surface internally. Cancer is all about the past, Saturn is all about the future. Cancer emotion, Saturn action. Cancer memory, Saturn responsibility. Cancer inheritance, Saturn self-definition. So this created a compression in the field. That's the tension you're speaking to. Or you couldn't ignore it. Oh no, by ignoring the past or staying stuck in it. Right? It's neither of those. The only way forward to act is to actually feel it and choose differently, right? Through awareness becomes conscious choice. Without collapsing into learned helplessness, which is like, it's always been this way, so it's always going to be this way, especially like when you're looking at all the relationships around you and there's that same codependent tolerance and, victim perpetrator or victim savior dynamic without defaulting into old relational survival roles I just named. And so this is exactly what the embodied evolution mentorship that I have created inside of the Rebirth program is targeting. It is bringing back online the aliveness, the power, and the play that gets to happen with disrupting these inherited roles and ancestral scripts. And this is where mission-driven entrepreneurs come to rebuild the foundation from the roots up. So this looks at our relationship with exiled emotions, grief, rage, fear, shame. It looks at our relationship with ourselves, how we define who we are, and getting so crystal clear on your values, your heart-centered desires that have been rooted in that channel from your heart to your womb to be expressed creatively through your whole life ecosystem, how you're building your family, how your home is designed, where you live, how you operate inside of your mission-driven business, what kind of business model you are building, what kind of clients you're working with, what kind of programs you're launching. Rebirth is, well, we have two tracks. We have the 3-month track, when I get a taste, where we'll stay more focused on that inner plane. There's always going to be action and external um, shifts to integrate. And in 3 months, realistically, you're not going to have a whole life ecosystem where you like move to a new home, where you like build your village, where you change your business model, where you change your parenting dynamic, where you change your relationship dynamic. That takes like, you know, let's start with a year. So that's the other option that I have there. For some people, 3 months commitment feels more manageable. So I have that one open as well. And if this is something that you've been navigating in the background and your business is working, you have clients, you have monthly recurring revenue, you have programs, you've made sales, you know how to market, you know how to sell, you know how to position yourself, you know what your message is, but there's still those like background pieces of your relationship with yourself of navigating these like big emotional waves of feeling like your life is truly a reflection of who you really are at a soul level. That's the work that I'm interested in doing with people inside of Rebirth through the embodied evolution method that really highlights emotional alchemy, working with bringing back into embodiment those emotional exiles with polarity integration. So these different expressions that become extreme when a part of our ego, which is the defense system based on our past experiences that develops as our identity, sits on top of those soul expression that wants to come through. We bring those into our awareness to realize that like neither is good or bad. It's about creating an expansive container for both to exist in a more holistic expression where they get to shift the relationship rather than being in that extreme, rather than holding the emotional burdens. It gets to the soul expression gets to be remembered, and the ego expression gets to become part of the system rather than fragmented from connection with that soul self, the capital S self, we could call it. And then the third part of the embodied evolution method is somatic mastery. This is very conceptual stuff, but we're really bringing it all into the body. I'm not interested in just doing mindset work. I'm not interested in just doing spiritual, energetic work that happens out in the ethers and you go off to integrate in your own time. I'm interested in doing the root level work that happens in the vessel of your body that is the communication system between your subconscious and your soul that gets expressed creatively into your outer world. All right. So that's embodied evolution, that's rebirth. Starting to bring it into a close. As much as this was a karmic clearing, as much as this was a cosmic event of grief and ancestral resolution, redefinition, let's say, it was also a societal timeline reset. There's no separation again between our individual experience and our collective experience. So this wasn't just personal. Collectively, this lunation and retrograde activated the collapse of outdated safety structures. Like, and we see this expressed as economic insecurity themes rising, of housing instability conversations, of breakdown of traditional family models, of questioning of what security even actually means. And this creates this widespread cognitive dissonance, which lies within what we were told versus what is real, no longer matching. And cognitive dissonance is a psychological term that when you have two conflicting beliefs, the way to create homeostasis, so there isn't this like push-pull conflict in your psyche and your body, is to either shift the belief or shift your action. And we want to do both, right? It's never one or the other. But I remember in psych classes in university when I was introduced to this concept, the example that's staying in my mind is like smoking, right? Um, People know smoking is bad for them at this point in our evolution, right? And so knowing something is bad for you, but still smoking, that's creating some cognitive dissonance. So how you get rid of that cognitive dissonance is shift the belief of like, oh, like I'm gonna stop smoking at this age, or I'm only gonna smoke this much, so it's not gonna be so bad for me. Right. So we're starting to make concessions on beliefs. Or the action could be, I'm gonna quit smoking because I know smoking is bad for me, and then that creates the match. The action and the belief has to change. And again, always both, but that's an example of how they're differentiated. Cheers. Stay hydrated out here. Answer water themes, especially all the stuff going on in our bodies. The more you stay hydrated, the more you connect with the element of water, like going swimming in the ocean, sitting by a river, swimming in a lake, showers, drinking lots of hydrogen-rich electrolyzed water. It's going to help with the fluidity of your emotional body, of your fascial system recalibrating, remembering that our fascial system is the conduit of our consciousness and how emotions move. Like literally the neurotransmitters of emotions move along the filaments of fascia. And so this is why things like when you're doing a yin yoga practice that targets specifically the connective tissues of fascia, you'll have these like random memories come up. You're just like, what? Where did that even come from? Well, it came from this adhesion being broken and the neurotransmitter that was stored in the tissues there with the memory being released. It's so fascinating. Like, love nerding out on this stuff. So if that's you too, comment in the show notes or come talk to me in the DMs about your fascination. I love that alliteration. All right. So we're rewriting collective emotional agreements. Society is shifting from survival through suppression and separation, which is what I've been highlighting here. This is like the red pill, blue pill in the Matrix. Which one you gonna choose? To survival through emotional intelligence and adaptability. I don't know about you, but I'm choosing the latter. But what's required to actually make that shift is confronting what was buried, confronting what is in our sexual system, including learned helplessness patterns, which is like it's always been this way. And I like to think of the like rat experiments in a scientific perspective for this, that if you administer a like shock wave on a regular schedule to a rat and like what the fuck? Why? Anyways, I digress. Um in a closed cage, and then after conditioning that like he can't get away from it response, and you open the cage, the rat's not going to try to get out because he's learned to be helpless. And this is what's happening on a widespread like social programming, like with the release of the Epstein files, with COVID, with all of these things. It's like creating this victimhood, this codependency with the powers that be, the government, the Hollywood, the blah, 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 blah. I don't get too much into that, but like that's a reality that we get to come to terms with so that we can choose to not be dependent on external authority for safety, as these systems are trying to anchor into. But that requires your active participation, your passive participation, actually. So actively choose to participate in creating, from victim to creator, a different system and get actually organized, get actually in relationships with people who are devoted to making the shift. All right. Timeline mechanics. This is the perception and reality split that we're experiencing right now. And really, like, yes, there's the split, but it's also like this swirling spiral double helix to infinity around the center integration, right? The collective is in a just noticeable difference threshold. And I like to weave in these like scientific examples because it feeds the science nerd in me. Although science can't explain everything, but also on the flip side of the coin, intuition, I think it can explain everything, but not to everyone, right? And so my entry point into believing in things that I can't see or prove was through the door of science. So I always like to keep that door open for other people. And it brings in that integration for me too, that like very intellectual science nerd that lives inside of my system gets to be expressed as well. All right. Just notable difference threshold. Let's bring in the frog experiment for this one. So if you put, and again, what the fuck are people doing these experiments? Anyways, and this is like a proponent for like why, like I want to raise my children. I will raise my children trusting in their intuition so that we don't need to do fucked up shit to prove what we already know to be true. Okay. If you put a frog in boiling water, it will jump out immediately to save itself. But if you put a frog in water and slowly adjust the temperature to a boiling point, it will die inside of the boiling water. Because small shifts don't accumulate, like it's below the level of perception until reality suddenly feels different. You're like, wait, what happened? This is why the highly sensitive, highly intuitive women that have been labeled as too emotional, as too sensitive, as difficult, as too much, as dramatic, blah, 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 are the ones that are leading this paradigm shift because the boiling water, that just notable little difference, our sensitive nervous systems For neurodiverse, that could be CPTSD, um, autism, ADHD, just like anything that deviates from this like norm, which like from my perspective is a whole disease in itself, but we're not going to get into that too much today, are going to notice the just noticeable difference that is below the perception of the quote unquote normal person, whatever that means. All right. Now, let's pair this with coming back to the double slit experiment. When the light beam is traversing through a slit in a piece of paper, the one that is not observed will travel in an uninterrupted straight path of programming, right? But the one that is observed, its path will deviate towards the point of observation. This is why awareness is what creates our choices, what shifts our reality, because it is a subjective construction. Okay. So what this means, start to put a bow on because I've been going on for, I think, over an hour here. I'm not too sure, but I'm having the best time. And I hope you're having a good time too. Oh, if you're still here, comment a frog emoji this time. I'm hoping to see all these like random emojis and people are like, what is going on? Um, Observation is shaping reality in real time. Your awareness has that much power, okay? And I want you to remember this. When you are shifting from however your ancestry, you personally, your family, your culture, your society, whatever, however you identify, as in a victim reality, when you shift into a creator reality identity, that is through observation. It gets to shift in real time. When you come to that choice point, when you notice the tension inside of your body and you make a different choice, your reality shifts according to your perspective shift. Which is why belief systems are destabilizing. People are like, I don't know what to believe in, what's real anymore. And multiple realities seem to coexist. Have you ever have a conversation with someone and they just like don't understand you? And you're like, yeah, but like, don't, da, 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 these are how the whole points connect. And they look at you like you have three heads. It's because they're literally living in a different reality than you. Okay, so don't waste your breath and your energy trying to get someone who has not connected the dots to connect them. Instead, connect with people who have already connected the dots and get organized in building what comes next. All right. And also, can you coexist peacefully and with kindness with people who have not yet connected the dots and allow them to witness your embodiment as a way shower to allow their dots to connect in their own timing? It's gonna be frustrated, but this is where we unhook from the savior dynamic as well. They're not a victim. You are not a savior. You're not here to wake them up. You're not here to heal them. You're here to be so anchored in your root system, in your truth, in your embodiment, that the field of reality, of relationship reorganizes around you. You are that powerful. And don't you dare forget it. People are experiencing entirely different timelines based on perception and nervous system state. Like I said, when you are in survival state, fight, fear, fawn, freeze, shutdown, dissociation, it's literally like you're on drugs. And those drugs are coloring your reality. When you're experiencing elevated emotions or you're emotionally flooded, it is like you are on drugs. You are experiencing reality through an altered state of consciousness. Okay? It's not bad, it's not wrong, and you're not stuck there. You can shift your nervous system state, you can shift your frequency, you can literally be in a shame spiral down, like downward, like, oh my God, the world is ending, I don't know what's real anymore. And like in an instant, choose to shift the energetic to an upward spiral of like, oh my God, I'm like in this ecstatic aliveness of like, look what I'm creating from that. Which is what's happening through the recording of this episode. I felt so heavy in my body before creating this. And so unblending from the story of a value association with that heaviness of being bad, of it, grief being low vibration. It's not. It is your relationship to it, is what you make of it, is the meaning that you create of it, the frame that you hold, and how that gets to be of value for others. All right. So this timeline reset is not at all an acceleration. We're not moving things forward faster. It is a recalibration, right? The body work that I had done, literally, I have this like muscle spasm in my leg, and like I could feel my energy vibrating differently. I could feel the recalibration happening, and this is happening on a collective level as well. The collective was pulled into reflection over action, to integration over expansion, and into truth over performance. This is why things felt like they paused, reversed, or unraveled. Is the timeline was being corrected, not advanced. So let's start to close off this very much longer episode. Usually my solo episodes are like 20-ish minutes, but like when we had the power series, I had a lot to say today. This was not just a heavy emotional period or a difficult retrograde or a sensitive new moon. It was a root code rewrite where inherited emotional patterns surfaced, where suppressed grief demanded witnessing, where karmic clearing at the ancestral level was initiated, right? It doesn't happen static, it's still unfolding. So continue to be present with that and your conscious choice. Old timelines lost their authority, and new ones can only begin from truth integrated, meaning embodied, meaning the pattern is shifting in our actions, in our relationship, and how we're showing up and how we're relating to ourselves. In everyday, day-to-day moments and the smallest things of like when you're cooking together in the kitchen, like well, something that comes up in my relationship, to give one last example, it's like my partner is a master chef. He is so knowledgeable and skilled in the kitchen, right? And I tend to be a bit of a chaotic mess in the kitchen, and that's how I like it. And he gets triggered, and he like goes into like his his zone of genius is creating organization systems in a kitchen through food projects. And so he's like directing me, and I'm like, don't tell me what to do. Because my ancestral inheritance of like being submissive to a man and like being tolerant, codependent gets activated, and then the survival response from my childhood of being a rebel, that's when I'm in the fight response, comes to the surface. So when I feel that fire, it's like, don't tell me what to do. It's like, I am safe. What's the best for me? Can I listen and make a choice that makes sense for me and makes sense for him? Of meeting in the middle, we're on the same team. Can I hear him before going into an emotional reaction? And can I also allow myself to be heard and witnessed and share vulnerably and express it through my body without making it his fault, right? Nuance. So, in one line, to tie this up, this Cancer new moon and Mercury retrograde with the Saturn and Aries flare in there. Also, it's my 30th birthday. So my Saturn return is coming to a close, which like that's um tomorrow. The past wasn't revisited for closure. It was revisited for correction. And I want to mic drop end it there. And on the back end, I'm coming back around to give you details on the new free program that I'm launching on Monday on the back end of my birthday for Leo season in true Leo fashion. It's called Attention For. This is a program to get turned on by being seen in your mission, in your relationships, and in your leadership. This is where the shy, introverted, like pulled back, fly on the wall, or, that's hyper arousal, or the perform for success, like putting on this hyper independent, like I've got it, I don't need help, I am the best, I have no emotions. fuck your feelings, follow the plan, boss babe, bitch, gets to evolve into the one who is in her authentic, radiant expression, in her magnetism, that's lit up by sharing what is true in her heart without trying to perform to receive love, without clinging to people gotta understand me. No, no, no. She's settled in herself. She is loving the attention she is receiving for the transmission that's coming through that heart womb channel that she is uniquely coded here to share. By the end of the 2 weeks, this is happening over a spacious period inside of the free Telegram community through audio drops. We're going to have some prizes for participation in the reflection, integration, and action pieces, because anything that I put out into the world is going to include those pieces so that you're not passively consuming information. It is an active participation and a recalibration, a remembrance, and an integration. We start on July 27th, is this Monday coming up. And my intention for you at the end of these 2 weeks is to feel rooted in your authentic visibility, where you can enter any room and be in your mission. That the feeling of threat by being perceived, or the feeling of like control to be perceived in a specific way, dissolves into this like juicy aliveness and turn on and playful power of being so in ownership of our field, of our channel, of our message, that reality reorganizes around us, that we're magnetizing connection, we're magnetizing visibility, we're magnetizing opportunities for that coherent, heart-led desire that was imprinted in our channel, in our heart womb, and coded into our DNA before we were born. It is our mission that is delivered through our business in this life. I'm so excited for this program. So I will have the link to the Telegram space. Hop in there, go into the Rich Revolutionary Circle, introduce yourself, and we get started on Monday. We'll see you either there or in the next episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. And I would love to hear what landed for you most and how it relates to what came through in these themes of the Cancer new moon, Mercury retrograde. You either leave it in a comment here or always open in my DMs to chat about what is going on individually, what patterns you see in the collective wisdom weave together. Thank you again for being here. We'll see you soon.